Hello everyone, in today's video I will be narrating stories that I found off of Reddit. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to my channel, like this video, and comment something down below. But without further ado,
let's get straight into these stories.
Recently, I moved out of my apartment. I simply had to because I didn't feel safe with my landlords. I lived in this really nice apartment in Brooklyn for a few months with my roommate, who paid for most of the rent since her parents are super rich. Our landlords were actually this seemingly really sweet couple who lived a few floors above with their kids. The first few weeks were somewhat normal except for the fact that every time I saw their kids in the elevator they would scream at me before they got off and then just ran away. I thought it was funny and cute at first, but then their eldest son came to visit and started doing the same thing. And he looked about my age. I didn't really think much of it since maybe he was just playing with his younger siblings. Stuff got weird really when I bumped into all of them together and we talked for a bit. Out of nowhere, while we were having a pleasant conversation, the dad apologized to me saying that his son might act strange because he's got some screws loose. I was pretty shocked with him just saying that out of the blue. I paused for a bit and I can't really remember what I said, but remember just wanting to get out of this conversation now. A few days later, I bumped into the dad again in the elevator. I was pretty weirded out and he was just talking about how great my apartment is and how much of a generous guy he is for giving us such a low rate. Then he asked if I could babysit his kids as he and his wife and his eldest son would be at a dinner. I said no at first, but he counter-offered saying he'd pay $150 an hour, and being the greedy idiot that I am, I agreed. This is where I screwed up. When I get to his place, I was speechless. His apartment wrapped around the entire floor of the building. It was the nicest apartment I will ever see, that's for sure. About an hour and everything was normal. I was playing some fighting game with his kids when we suddenly heard the front door slam. I told them to stay there as I peeked to see what was going on, and I see the dad falling all over the place, clearly drunk. He started walking toward me and at the last minute fell face first onto his couch. I must have popped a blood vessel trying to hold in my laughter. I asked if he was okay and walked over to assist him. He then turned around, looked at me and said my wife will let us, please. When I tried asking, his wife walked up to me, thanked me, paid me, and told me to come back another time. I just kinda went back to my apartment in shock, wondering what just happened, and I definitely wasn't going back. I told my roommate and she told me that she also bumped into the dad and he told her my wife is cool, just so you know, with no explanation, and just left. At this point we knew that we sure were not renewing our lease. We didn't see our landlords until our final month. We kinda joked to our friends about how our landlords were creepy cooks. The next time I see them was actually with my boyfriend, who was well aware of what they were trying to do. It was an intensely awkward elevator ride, as when they saw us in there they just went quiet and smiled and nodded at us repeatedly. As we step out the elevator, the dad shouts hey to us and winks at me as the doors closed. After that I asked my boyfriend to stay with us for the remainder of our lease calls. At this point my roommate and I were freaked out. Our final and creepiest encounter was a few days before moving out. My roommate walked out the apartment and both the landlords were sitting in front of the elevators waiting for us. She said they started sobbing when they saw her and then begged us to stay. They apparently apologized for making us uncomfortable and said they thought we were the pretty young girls they were waiting for. She didn't say a word to them and got on the elevator and called me to warn me they were outside, and then they started to knock. My boyfriend answered and said when the guy saw me asked if I was here. Of course my boyfriend said no, but they tried walking in anyway. I walk out my room saying I'll call the police if they don't leave, and they beg me to not and run out the apartment. A few days ago, we get a text from a random number saying we could live there 6 months free if we just gave them a few nights. Of course, blocked and deleted. The whole thing was such an uncomfortable experience living there all those months, especially knowing they had keys to our apartment. If you're liking this video, all I ask is that you make sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Thank you. Yesterday I took my son fishing. He wanted to go to a nearby lake that we haven't been to in quite some time. It's not known to be a great area. It's known to be a late night hookup spot as well as a late night drug deal location. Due to the lake's reputation, I had made a deal with my dad that I wouldn't stay there past 4 in the afternoon without him. On to the story now. My 12-year-old son, who looks much younger than he is, and I pulled up at our favorite fishing spot, a small pond on the opposite side of the road as the lake. Almost immediately, an older gentleman approached us asking if there were fish in the pond. I replied that we had just gotten started, so nothing yet, but that we had caught fish in the pond on plenty of other occasions. He thanked us for the information and returned to his spot on the other side of the road. About 15 minutes later, another younger man approaches the older man with a dog. I can see and hear them chatting, but they've made no move to involve us in the conversation, which I'm glad for. I just want to enjoy a day with my son. Unfortunately, the water in the pond was incredibly low and murky, and I could tell we weren't going to have any luck. I tell my son to pack it up and we'll try another spot on on the other side of the lake. As we begin packing our gear into the trunk, the younger man yells over sorry if my dog and I ran you off. I tell him it's no problem and we were simply moving to a better fishing spot. He then starts telling me how nice it is to see a mom taking her kid fishing and how you don't see that very often. I get this a lot, so I'm pretty used to it. We have a short conversation about it as I pack up and I then move towards the driver's side doors to depart. Before I can leave, the younger man starts up another conversation, this time asking me how old I think he is. This feels strange to me, but I'm nice to a fault sometimes, so I answer his question. I tell him I'm a horrible judge of age, but maybe 25. He tells me he's 38 and I'm too kind, and I laugh it off saying something like I work with teenagers, so they always guess me well above my age just to be mean. He asks where I work and I stupidly tell him my city. Turns out he lives there too and starts going on and on about how he got a free apartment on such and such street because his baby mama kicked him out of their house. I think he's talking about some kind of government assistance program. Weird flex, but okay man. At this point, I'm standing by the car door with my hand on the handle and my son is already in the back seat. This guy can't take the hint and starts telling me all about his awful baby mama and how women are supposed to be submissive, quiet, and do what they're told. He specifically said, I mean, it's cool that you can bait a hook or whatever, but you're still a woman. Now my alarm bells are blaring. This guy struck up a conversation by commending me for doing a typically dad thing with my kid. Now he's putting me down for the same thing. He's gone from being overly friendly and complimentary to agitated and ranting. I should have been rude and just got in the car and left, but I've unfortunately been conditioned, like many women, to be polite even when we're uncomfortable. Instead, I start making comments in the hopes he'll see I'm not some meek submissive woman who's going to agree with him. After all, I'm a tatted up chick with an eyebrow piercing and 2 lip piercings. I don't exactly look like a submissive little housewife. I guess I was trying to make him just as uncomfortable as he made me in the hopes he'd leave me alone. After he says women shouldn't be loud or opinionated, I tell him, oh, well, you wouldn't like me at all. He tries to backpedal saying, I mean, it's okay to be loud I guess, but don't try that with your man, you know. I say my man doesn't tell me anything. I do what I want. This kind of back and forth goes on for a while before he finally shakes his head and says I just don't understand what kind of woman would act like that. I reply a strong one. As soon as the words left my mouth, the older gentleman yells from his spot on the bank, yeah, say that again honey. This distracted the creep long enough for me to hop in the car and lock the doors. I still don't feel safe though. Unbeknownst to the creep, only 2 of my car doors actually have functioning locks, but at least of the 2 on his side. I put the key in the ignition and turn. No dice, nothing. Of all the times for my car to act up, it chooses now. Panic has now set in. As I repeatedly try to start my car, I can see him out of the corner of my eye. He's taken notice of my car troubles and is trying to get my attention. As he takes a few steps towards my car, the engine finally roars to life and I peel out of there. Only then do I let my composure crumble and have a long talk with my son about what just happened. To the older gentleman who took notice of my discomfort and provided a distraction, I'd gladly meet with you again any day. When I was in my late teens, I worked at a little coffee shop in my city. This was around the time that smartphones hit the scene. I had just got my first phone and laptop recently around this time. Anyway, we had this one regular customer who was very eccentric. He made me really uncomfortable if I am being honest. He had strange vibes. It was in the middle of a scorching summer and he always wore many layers in a large parka with faux fur trim and sunglasses. I never once saw his eyes. He would get out of his car and run for the door in his big coat, shielding himself from the sun. He always ordered almost every item on the menu, but always said it was not for him and he didn't like the food there personally. One day he came in and ordered the whole menu as per usual. I was checking him out at the cash register and he leaned in and softly said to me, "You seem like a nice young woman. I need to warn you about something. I'm not supposed to tell anyone, but it honestly bothers my conscience keeping this information to myself." "What is it?" I asked. "Do you have a computer or smartphone?" He asked. "Yes, I just got one," I answered. "Get rid of them immediately," he said sternly. Was that?" I asked. "I have a friend who has certain government ties. Nothing is private. The government will be monitoring everything and it's all permanent." He told me that they are planning to put up concentration type camps in some major United States cities. They will use the info on your cell phones to decide who will go and where they will go. I've gotten rid of everything that can be traced and I'm planning on running away soon. Please be safe," he urged. He left and I kinda just shrugged him off as a crazy person, but it still weighed heavy on my mind a while. I went on to leave that job and got a job job as a hostess at a restaurant. A year passed by and I'd pretty much forgot about that whole encounter until one we would cross paths again. I was at the front host stand where I greet and see guests arriving at the restaurant when a limousine pulls up and a man gets out accompanied by 2 large bodyguards at his side. It was the guy from the coffee shop. This time he was wearing a sleek tuxedo and the same sunglasses. He enters the building and says, "You remember me?" I said I did. He said, "Do you remember what I said?" Again, I told him yes. He proceeds to pass the host stand and he examines every inch of the restaurant as if he was looking for something. He then signals his bodyguards to follow him to the door. Before exiting the building, he says, looking back at me, "Don't forget." He then got back in the limousine and I never saw him again after that. It was the strangest thing ever because he knew he'd find me there. But how did he find me at my new job? Perhaps he asked someone at my old job, but still, why go out of your way to make some flashy appearance like this? I was just thinking of this and wondering whatever became of that man and who he was. Alright, but that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and comment something down below. But as always,
Have a nice day.